guys? Hope you're having an awesome day. The reason why this upload is coming a little bit later is because I was on a family vacation in South Padre Island, which is pretty much like the southern tip of Texas, almost Mexico. And so it was a great time. However, I was away from home for almost a whole week, and if you guys know anything about vacations, free time comes few and far between, and so let alone time to film videos. And so we go here pretty much every year, and it's a really awesome trip because we're right off the beach. Though I am not the biggest beach fan, it's really cool being able to just be walking distance from the beach. The reason I don't like the beach is because sand gets literally everywhere, but we had my family and my wife's family here as well, played this TikTok game, whatever, had some amazing coffee and some good breakfast food. And we even went to this dolphin watch, which is a really cool thing we've never done before. And we were not only able to see dolphins, we were also able to see a beautiful sunrise, and actually not sunrise, sunset. And we also were able to see some fireworks. And you know, I always say, you've seen one firework, you've seen them all, but really this was not the case. It was a pretty good show, and with good company, and the weather was beautiful in the evening, and it really just was a good part of the trip. And then one of the days we also went to go see this turtle sanctuary they have down there. Save the sea turtles, stop using straws, my people, just sip it from the cup. But but that was fun. And then you even had time to just improv some games. We just didn't have any nets for soccer or anything, and we're like, you know what, I'm just gonna dig 2 holes, and we have to try to kick the ball into the other person's hole. But it was a good time being able to improv some games. Even saw some cool sand castles when we went mini golfing, and you can see how enthused we are at this amusement park. And that was kind of it. We did some other things throughout the trip. I wasn't able to film them, but I'm happy to be home. And the reason being is because I only have a few days left of my summer before I go back to school, back to teaching. And so I'm really trying to milk the summer last couple days that I can. But I want to give you guys a breakdown of what I thought of Spa and the race. I also made a video on Spa and kind of the history there and some of the dangers that come with this track. If you guys want to check it out, I'll go ahead and link it up here. And but let's go ahead and get into the start of the weekend, which starts with qualifying. And so this whole weekend, weather was going to be a factor. Typically at Spa, weather is just crazy unpredictable, and rain is usually mostly going to be a factor. And so this whole weekend, they're like, yeah, there's a chance of rain pretty much every day. And so weather was a threat, and that was no exception to qualifying. And so qualifying was kind of a wet qualifying session, which tends to be quite exciting because of the tire strategies that come into play. Also really test the driver's skill. And so due to this wetness, many drivers were slipping and sliding. Notably, we had Lando, we had Esteban Ocon, and Magnussen have some moments throughout qualifying. Some other notable moments throughout qualifying would be that Ferrari looks really good and looks really competitive throughout the weekend, and props to them for figuring it out. And Max barely makes it through P2, has kind of a moment there, and drama actually unfolds between Max and his engineer. And so in this moment, Max, and I'll throw it up on the screen, Max says, "We should have just effing pushed 2 laps in a row, like I said." And then he said, "You are though, Max." And he said, "I don't give an F if I'm through in P10, it was crap execution." And then his engineer says, "Okay, and then when the track was 2 seconds quicker for your final lap and you didn't have any energy left, how would that have gone down? But you tell me what you want to do in Q3 and we'll do it, sets, fuel, and run plan." And so they kind of have this bickering back and forth. And what I've noticed about great athletes is that typically they can be a little bit rigid, and they're such great competitors. You think of like somebody like a Kobe Bryant or a Michael Jordan that I don't know if they're the most like pleasant people. I'm not saying this is necessarily all what Max is, but he does have moments where he can be a little bit like, I don't know, frustrating to be around, but really he just wants to win so much, and he holds high expectations of himself, but also his team as well. And so that happened, okay? And then notably, Piastri out-qualifies Norris, which typically it's the other way around. Max barely squeaks by Leclerc for pole because of this whole incident. And Ferrari, again, looking pretty good for the weekend. And now we have the starting grid for the sprint race where much of the same is present. And so I'll go ahead and throw up the sprint, how things started up with the sprint race as I continue to talk about it. But sprint race is going to be an 11-lap shootout here. And as I mentioned, weather is a factor. And so wet race to start out. And so right away, people dive into the pits and they want to make a tire decision. Wets or inters were kind of the two options that people had, and some people opted to stay out and just stay on the tires they started with. But really, it ended up being the best call was to dive in right away. And so we see, because of this, Piastri made this call and ended up benefiting him quite a bit. He was able to lead the race early on because he didn't stay out, and Max decided to stay out, and that cost him that position for momentarily. Lap 3, Alonso gets into the gravel. His sprint race is over, not because his car was damaged, but you're kind of just beached out there. Once you get into the gravel, there's not much you can do. Unfortunately, the sun starts to shine through the clouds a little bit around lap 6, and so this rainy race, wet race started to become, okay, how is it going to get dry? What's happening here? How much are the tires going to stick? And so Max gets Oscar easily following the Sonoda yellow that he kind of had a moment. Perez and Hamilton had a huge moment. This was a lot of controversy this weekend because Hamilton ended up getting a 5-second penalty for this incident. And from what I see, it was really a racing incident. I don't necessarily think it obviously wasn't on purpose. But ultimately, he got a 5-second penalty, which I think is quite large. I mean, that's a big penalty. Good thing it was just for the sprint race. It's that the implications aren't as large if it were the real race. And then Sainz gets into Perez now, and we really start to see Perez struggling greatly. He's getting passed by Sainz right away, and then right after that, he gets bagged by Leclerc. And so you see that the Ferraris had good cars throughout the weekend, so it's not like a surprise that they're doing well. But really, you start to see Perez fall quite a bit, and then all of a sudden on lap 7, he gets into the gravel. And so it's just like one bad thing after another, and Twitter kind of goes crazy, you know, and this warranted, I mean, Checo hate continues. I think he's kind of deserved this reputation now that it's happened so many times, right? And so here's kind of how things shaked out for the rest of the sprint race. Not much really happened. So here is the starting grid for the race on Sunday. And so this will be the Spa Grand Prix, the Belgian Grand Prix. And notably, you'll notice that the sprint race results are not matching up with the starting grid for this race. And because there's a couple penalties that really came into the mix here. Notably, we mentioned already the Hamilton penalty, but also we have the penalty with Max Verstappen. And you may be asking, why is Max Verstappen getting a penalty? Well, he had to change a gearbox, and so here's kind of he got 5 position penalty, I believe. And so this is kind of how things squared away with Leclerc starting on the front as well as Perez. And then Hamilton still claiming 3rd place, and Sainz in 4th place, Piastri in 5th, and we have Norris in 7th and Verstappen in 6th. And Stroll and Alonso rounding out the top 10 there with Russell right above them in 8th. And everybody else kind of files in accordingly. But really what people were looking for in this race is that Max is starting a couple positions further back, and nobody's doubting that he can get to the front of the grid. He's proved that by now. But when you start further back in the grid, there is more danger that can present itself. Drivers that maybe have less experience, that have less to lose. And so I'm not saying anybody was hoping for him to be in an incident, but that is definitely a risk that can happen. And then everybody has seen how Ferrari's been pretty good this weekend, and they showed okay in the sprint race. And so the hope is that they can carry that over to the race today as well. But let's get into the race and kind of my thoughts on how things squared away. On the start of the race, Leclerc is able to keep that lead early on. And on the surface, it looks like a relatively clean start. However, there was an incident that kind of went unnoticed until they reviewed some things and replayed some things, and that was the incident between Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz. And I don't think Oscar could have done too much here. Carlos was definitely in the wrong. And really what happened is you just start to see Piastri fade super fast. And you're like, what is going on here? What happened? What happened? What happened? And then they replay it and you're like, oh my goodness, he just got totally taken out there. And it ended up ruining Sainz's race as well a little bit later on. And he ended up not finishing the race. But Perez ends up getting a lead from Leclerc pretty early on, the first couple lap or so. And then Norris starts to fade early as well as Sainz. And so not only is Piastri fading, but Norris is fading as well. And so both McLarens end up not doing so hot early on. And you're like, what's going on? Piastri basically is out and Lando's not really keeping pace. And so that's frustrating. Yuki gets Sainz early on, and really you don't know what the implications are for Sainz. We know he was in that moment with Piastri, but we don't know necessarily if his race is over at this point yet. And he starts to get bagged by quite a few people, and Yuki's car looked good throughout the weekend, and he ends up getting Sainz on lap 5. Albon, everybody's like on the announcers like, oh, he's got a rocket ship, he's got a rocket ship. I mean, he's fighting for a top 10 finish. His car's better than normal, I guess. I don't know if he has a rocket ship announcers, but anyways, Verstappen works his way up to second by lap 9. It seemed like it was just way too easy. And the question at this point, we have a Red Bull 1-2, and the question is, can Perez keep the lead from Verstappen? I don't think so, but I guess you can ask yourself that question. And then let's get into the mid-race, see how things squared away there. And so I don't want to say not much happened, but I want to say there was quite a few passes in the middle of the pack here. Not too much changed in the front end of things, but there was quite a few mixing around and some action in the middle of the race here. And really by lap 17, the question was answered. Max did get Perez. Really what I'm seeing in the middle part of the race is Mercedes and Aston Martin start to kind of have a quabble, or what would I say? They're having a query, not a query, they're having a, I don't know, they're racing each other, okay? And really there's a couple battles here. Russell gets Stroll. Alonso, it just doesn't look the same as he did in the beginning of the season. Hamilton's been looking really good the past couple weekends, and so it seems like Mercedes has stomped Aston Martin and put them back in their place for now. I don't know if that'll change. Light rain starts to happen around lap 19, and Yuki ends up getting 6th place, continues his climb, and Tsunoda's looking really well, looking really good. And you're like, okay, AlphaTauri looking good, but what's the other AlphaTauri doing? Anyways, Alpine's and Williams fighting for points in the top 10. They're kind of working their way in there. And in this middle part of the race, Alfa Romeo really steps up and is able to solidify themselves in the middle of the pack, which we haven't necessarily seen them both consistently there together in past weekends. But that's really what happened in the middle part of the race. There isn't like any insane drama that happened, but let's get into the results and generally my thoughts on the race and close it out here. And so I'm going to go ahead and throw the results up here on the screen. But really, even though Max had that penalty early on with his gearbox change, he was still able to solidify 1st place. And then notably, we have Sergio getting 2nd place after some roughness throughout the weekend. He's able to finish strong. And it's a Red Bull 1-2, which we haven't seen as consistently as we maybe anticipated at the beginning of the season. Leclerc getting 3rd place, and you could say that, you know, you wish he did better, but at the end of the day, a top 3 finish for him is pretty good. And we see Hamilton, Alonso, and Russell and Norris kind of in there. And really, if you're Lando, you know, you're not terribly frustrated with 7th place, but if you're McLaren, you're probably frustrated that Piastri isn't able to be there in the picture. Esteban Ocon had a moment earlier on this weekend, able to finish in the top 10. Good on him. Really, I'm asking myself, Alonso, wow, able to kind of work his way past George, and you see Stroll still in 9th, and I think that the chasm between the two of them is pretty evident, even though at one point in the race, Alonso was behind Stroll. Tsunoda had a pretty good drive this weekend, and he ends up rounding out the top 10. Pierre Gasly, Bottas, and Zhou getting 11, 12, and 13. As I mentioned, Alfa Romeo kind of paired together for once. And then we see Alex Albon, which, rocket ship, he's so fast. Oh my gosh. 14th, dude. I mean, come on. Kevin Magnussen, Daniel Ricciardo, Logan Sargent, Hülkenberg, and then we have Sainz and Piastri to round out the back end of the field. Unfortunately, I feel like both of them would have probably been in the mix. They both had good cars, and they just found a way to get into each other early on in the race. But what did I think of the race? I thought that qualifying and the sprint race were more exciting than the actual race, with the weather being in the picture, with tire strategies being able to differentiate among the drivers. That was exciting for me. Spa is a very infamous track. You know, we didn't have any crazy scary wreck, praise the Lord, but it seemed like the narrative wasn't anything super exciting. I wish there was a little bit more to it, but there was quite a few battles in the middle and the back of the field that were exciting, and it was nice to see some of those guys get a little bit racy, and there are some high speed sections that made some of the passes a little bit easy for many people, and I don't know if there was many surprises this weekend. Maybe Sergio getting second. That's bad. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. I know it's a little bit late. Give me some grace there. We have a break coming up here. It's called summer break for Formula One. I will be going back to work, but I'm going to continue making videos, and be on the lookout for that. If there's any topics you'd like to see me cover, maybe leave that in the comments below, as we have a few weeks off from Formula One, and I'm looking forward to finishing out the Formula One season strong, and doing that coverage and continuing to cover some other events happening in other racing series around the world. But have an awesome week, and I hope to see you guys in a video soon. And please like and subscribe to see more motorsports content from the Rhino Racing channel. Have a great week.